everybody, this is Mr. B, and you are watching Music Notes. On today's Studio One Basics, we are going to be exploring the main timeline at the top of Studio One. Let's go. Okay, so let's start with the left side of our main timeline, and we will work ourselves over to the right. The first thing I want to do is to go to View and make sure that we are customized to basic. Normally it will be on this other setting, which is complete. It has everything that you need and plus extra stuff in Studio One that we are just not going to necessarily need to use at this time. We will change it later for a different assignment, but let's just keep it in basic so we can just fully understand Studio One's timeline. The other thing I want you to do is to go to this little question mark and where it says Info View, select that. That will show you in this black line right here what everything does. Okay. All right, so let's start with the timeline here. All right. Well, first, don't worry about this. This is for another lesson where we can connect a MIDI device and assign knobs to certain parameters of plugins. Pretty awesome stuff. But let's just look at this section right here. So we have the link, arrow, and range tool. When selected, the arrow tool will behave as the range tool and hovering over the top half of the event. Okay, or we can turn that off, and this is just the arrow tool. The arrow tool simply will control what you want it to in Studio One. If you want to move something, or if you want to highlight several things, the arrow tool is made for that. Next, we have the range tool. Now, the range tool is similar, but it'll only select certain locations. And let's say if I wanted to delete this part, I can just put the range tool over that and it will delete it. So the range tool is really helpful in that regards. Okay, next is the split tool. This will cut or slice your regions. So if I want to cut it here, okay, I can cut it there, and etc. So that's really easy to use. And then erase, I can just simply erase a section without having to highlight it and press delete. It just erases it. Then you have the paint tool. Okay, that does something with automation. And it's used to create empty instrument parts or gain envelopes in audio events. So I can go like this and just create new regions. But you know what? I'm just going to delete those with the eraser tool. Now this is the mute tool. If I just want to mute a region, I can easily just mute a region. And then this is the bend tool. This will bend certain regions. This is helpful when recording guitars or vocals and it's not quite on the region, or the region's not quite on the grid where you want it to be. So that's pretty helpful. We also have the play listen tool. So we'll click and hold any track to instantly solo the track and start playback from the position you clicked. Okay, so I've got everything here playing. You can see that everything is soloed, but I only want to play this section right there. Well, that's what that'll do. It'll only play from right here on this one track. Oh, I want to hear what it sounds like here. Okay, well, we'll turn those on. Oh, I want to hear this, or I want to hear this. Okay, so that's really, really helpful. Now, a great way to navigate all of these. We can press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We can actually press the numbers 1 through 8 and enable all of these, like the eraser tool is 4. Okay, so you see how there's this little blue line underneath. This is really cool because we can actually have multiple commands. If I want to have more than one command, that's what this little blue line will do. So right now, I have it just on arrow. Here, let me put it back on arrow by pressing 1. And now if I press 1 again, it'll move this little blue bar below. Well, what does that do? If I come down here, my arrow tool is enabled, but if I press command, now it's the second command, which right now is mute. Pretty cool. If I want to quickly move it over to here, now I can have my second command by pressing command be the solo playback. So we would just press 1 to move those over. All right, moving on. This is your resolution of your grid. Right now we have it to 1/16 in bars. You can change it to seconds or samples or frames if you're dealing with like a video, but we really don't need to change any of these at the time. All right, what this means is that our quantized value, that means here's one bar, let's just say from 6 to 7, and it's divided up into 4 pieces. This is 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. And each of those, which are the beat, where you're going to hear the click of the metronome, click, 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 click. And each of those is divided into 4 additional sections. Well, 4 times 4 is 16, and that's what the 1/16th grid means. Okay, now the snap to grid. This is a super helpful tool that you'll probably have on most of the time. Sometimes you'll have it off if you have vocals or if you're trying to move something that's not on the grid, but most of the time you'll have it on. And we can simply turn it on and off by pressing N. N. Right now I'm just pressing N, turning it on and off. Now, how to zoom in and out in Studio One. This is your bars time base, timeline grid, okay? On your mouse, you're gonna zoom up and zoom down. Zoom up and zoom down. Now, where did my project go? I'm gonna press comma, and it'll bring me back to the beginning every time. So, comma will bring me back to the beginning of the project. Okay, let's move on. We have next the toggle ripple edit. Not too familiar with that one. I don't know every single thing on here, so we'll skip that one for now. But this one is going to be really, really important, and this is auto scroll. I selected it on. It just in Studio One 7.2, which is the most current version, they just included a continuous centered auto scroll, which is pretty awesome. And let me show you what that looks like. So if I come over here, okay, and I press Control, and then I press continuous centered. Before it was turn over or continuous left. And let me just show you what each of those actually means, okay? So if I have my timeline, okay, and it's going, if I zoom in pretty fast, here is my, now it's following it in a new frame. Okay, so there's the new frame. If I turn this off, let's see where it goes, and then it disappears, although the music's still playing. Okay, so now if I change that and I turn this on, but as I press Control and change this to continuous center, this is really cool because now it'll keep my playhead right in the center. So now watch this. There, it's right in the center. You turn on my loop, and it's a lot easier to look at and navigate your whole project with that moving in the center. Okay, so the next one is cursor follows edit position. All right, that's not used that often by me, so I couldn't tell you too much about it, but let's have this on. Now this function right here is one of my favorite because sometimes when you're in Studio One and you're really zooming in, you can't really you want to zoom out and you want everything to fit into screen. Maybe you have more tracks and you're scrolling up and down and you're doing all of this stuff. This button right here, let me zoom it in. This toggle auto zoom will put everything into frame of the whole project. Watch this, boom. Now everything is in frame in the whole project. So this is a super helpful tool whenever you just want to get everything back in frame. Okay, that is the toggle auto zoom. And then up here, this is the launcher. The launcher, which you can also activate by pressing B, is one of my favorite additions to Studio One 7. It's simply when you can just take all of your regions and start making scenes out of them. And we will do that in a future episode. All right, so next is the PreSonus account. Okay, so that's just for administrative purposes. Then we have the Task Manager. This just shows you what has been downloaded most recently. Okay. And then this home button will take you back to the home page. And this is your document or your project page, project and home, and switch to project or home page. Okay, so now let's take a look at this section of the main timeline up at the top of Studio One. This will show you the track list. This is your inspector, or this is the inspector. Okay, so this is your track list. So this is really helpful because sometimes you want to collapse certain tracks that you're not using and it will not show up on your timeline. We can also see groups. We haven't made any groups yet. And we can also see scenes, which is pretty cool and interesting. And we'll do all of that later in the semester. So now let's take a look at the inspector. The inspector is going to be telling you a lot of really good information, and we can transpose right here, which means lower or raise notes. That's pretty awesome. We'll do that later in the semester too. We can look at our automation, and down here you can also see your inserts, your plugins, and your sends, which we covered in the mix window tutorial. And then down here you can see some loop information, or your impact, which is the name of the drum kit that I have currently. Okay, you can also change the color by selecting this here, and you can change the name up there as well. So that's the inspector. We will be using the inspector more in depth later in the semester. So just remember that the inspector is this I button Okay, now in the settings. Now I love to have most of the settings enabled. For example, you probably do not have, let's go to visibility, colorize, track controls. You can see behind me that these are now shades of blue, just like the main track. Now I prefer to have those on because I'm a color kind of guy, but I also, that's more or less personal preference. So the colorized track controls show channel numbers in track. Okay, show event name, show instrument part envelopes, show track notes. We really don't need the track notes. That's if you want to like come over here and type in something fun or some notes involving the track. You can easily do that. All right, that's pretty cool. But if you don't want those on, if it's taking up more real estate, then we can not show the track notes. Showing the track icons, I really like because it adds like a little character to your tracking headers. For example, if I have drums, if I go to the icon, now I can select a drum set and I can easily see, oh, these are drums. So this is percussion. Let me go to the percussion, what kind of percussion it is, maybe a bongo or a conga or whatever it is, and it just makes it a little bit more interesting and fun to work with. So the icon setting is really easy to work on, and it's easy to use. Now, the show chords on event, turn this on because we will be using this later in the semester when we explore the chords track. Now these other ones you can have on: monitoring, follows record or record, monitoring mutes playback, ignore the plugin latency. These are less applicable for what we're doing. If we let's look at selection. Solo follows selection, instrument inputs, enable crosshair, cursor for tools, locate. I mean, if you don't know what it is, it's probably just best to have it turned on. Okay, next is the automation. This is the automation tab. The automation tab is going to show you what automations are being enabled. So right now I don't have any automation enabled, so I really don't need to have that on, but that is how we can turn on and off the automation tab. So for example, this little icon over here, this little automation button right here will open up the automation, and there's always two automations already available, which is volume and panning. So let's open up this one and just take a look using the automation tab. All right, I don't have any other automation, so it's not really showing me any automation. But if I wanted to have those open and then just collapse them, really easy to do. Next is open up a secondary ruler. Okay, this is helpful when you're not only looking at bars, but you want to look at how long your song is. You can put it into seconds. Samples more bars and frames, but seconds is going to be the most useful because we're making songs in time. All right, so these are actually a new section called global. This is a global secondary ruler. Markers are incredible, and we're going to be definitely doing more markers over the course. But if I want to add a marker, if I come over here and add a marker, and then add a marker here, add a marker there, I can easily toggle between different sections of the marker by simply looking at the transport section. And down here, if I have it here, this button right here, down at the bottom, let's take a look. Okay, I'm going to zoom in here. This goes back to the previous marker. This goes to the forward marker. And you can also access that by pressing Shift B and Shift N. So let's actually practice that. Shift B, Shift N. Shift B, Shift N. Going back and forth to different markers makes it really easy to scroll through different parts of your project. Okay, markers, super, super helpful. Okay, next we have the chords track. Now the chords track is one of my favorite tracks because what a chords track does is that it enables a particular chord structure to be the guiding force for the entire song and can link different parts to it. Like, let's say if you have a bass line or a melody and it's out of key and you follow it on the chords track, well then it's not going to be out of key anymore. To actually make a chords into the chords track, all you do is drag it up and voila, now your chords track is enabled and you can actually follow that by pressing follow. And in the inspector, which is going to be saved for another lesson. That's the chords track. Next, we have the arranger track. The arranger track is an incredible feature because then you can start structuring your song in different ways, and you can also use the arranger to expand different parts of your song. For example, if I like my intro and I also wanted to be the outro, I will press Command C, which is copy, and Command V to paste it. And now everything in that section has copied. Okay, if I want to move a section, I can just drag that and voila, we can move different sections with ease. It's no problem. So the arranger track, the arranger global, has more than one function of just of being a indicator for different sections of a song. It can also be a tool to create a song. So the arranger is very powerful as well. Now this little tab will show you all of these other globals, which are similar or exactly the same to what we did. You can see there's the ruler, there's the marker, there's the chords, there's the arranger, and then there's a couple more. There's lyrics. If you're writing lyrics to your song, you can type in your lyrics there. Okay, you can just see there, press the L, type in your lyrics, and then your lyrics will coincide with your song. Video, you can also include a video, exactly the same thing. A lot of people do that when they're like recording a guitar riff and they want to remember what the riff is and have it go side and side with the actual video and the riff. So there's lots of applications for that as well. Then there's also the signature, the time signature, which you can change the time signature if you choose during the middle of the song. I don't really ever do that, but some people can. Or the tempo. You can also change the tempo in the middle of the song as well, which is pretty interesting, but it's not something that I would ever do either. Let's just hear how this sounds with the tempo from 70, twice as fast to 140, and it's in a slope. Okay, so let's move that back, keep that at 70. These are the global parameters in Studio One. And finally, what I'm going to show you is how to add a track. Open a new track. This is the track window. We can also press T, or if we select here, we can add what kind of track we want to include. Audio, MIDI, automation, or a folder. A folder is really cool because that will collapse other tracks and put them into the folder with ease, and that is keeping your desktop nice and tidy, and will also allow for busing of different tracks, which we'll get into in another video. So that is everything for this particular timeline. And remember to have fun with your production.